Okay, everybody ready to start? Yes. Good. I'm right here. I'm just right here. Sorry. That's the kind of reaction we want, Mallory. Thank you for doing that. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. We appreciate everybody coming to today's event. My name is Sam Davidson. I'm the CEO here at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and I'm glad you're here. Quick show of hands. First time in the building? Raise your hand. Great. A couple folks. Nice. Welcome, first timers. All right. Other show of hands. Who's an entrepreneur in the room? Yes. We love seeing that. Welcome home is what I like to say. If you've not been here before or not been here in a long time, the Nashville Entrepreneur Center exists to help make Nashville the best place to start and grow a business by increasing the likelihood of success for entrepreneurs. That's any entrepreneur, no matter your business, how long you've been doing this. We love to feature folks like the person we've got today, Dave Delaney. I'm going to talk about him in a second, just to share something, some kind of idea that can help us grow those businesses. Of course, we couldn't do today awesome lunch without a couple of friends of ours. So quick couple commercials and then we're going to turn it over. First, our friends here at Dell for Startups. Let's take a watch.
Dell for Startups is a proud sponsor of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Dell for Startups is a program from Dell Technologies that helps entrepreneurs launch, grow, and scale their startups by providing resources, tech expertise, and scalable technology solutions. Some of the key benefits include a dedicated technology advisor who is local to Nashville, discounts and promotions on select Dell products and services, and access to our vast portfolio of products. For any questions on how to access these benefits, visit dell.com/startups or contact your dedicated Dell for Startups point of contact.
Awesome. And for us, that is Joy. She's not here today, but she's around here a lot. So if you have any questions about what Dell can maybe do for you as you grow your company, we can put you in touch with her. We also can't do this without our growth partners. So these are partners of ours that are committed to your growth. So we do that in these areas: banking, technology, legal, and accounting. If you are growing your business and you're like, man, I would love to talk to somebody in this area, pick their brain, let us know that. I'm going to point to Trey McCoy. He's in the back of the red shirt. If you guys have not chatted with him on your way in, he's our facilities and membership manager, so he can help you make those connections, as can Lauren McWhorter, who's also here in the front with the red hair, and so she can also make that connection as well. So people are in red today. If you need some help, check them out. Last thing I'll show you real quick is, well, not the last thing before this, but InvestTN. LaunchTN is one of our regional partners. They're doing so much great things, so much great work across the state. One of those is by managing the InvestTN fund. So this is equity capital that is available for Tennessee-based startups. So they vet your business like any other investor, so you got to be ready for that. If you have questions about that, you can see us, and we can help you answer those. But check that out. Apply to that. Let us walk you through that. But they're wanting money to come off the sidelines and grow Tennessee startups. So a couple things coming up that we always like to preview here. So we do something like this at least once a week. Here's what's coming up next. You can see all our events at ec.co/events. But next week, we've got a power-packed Thursday. We have our normal monthly happy hour. Come get some drinks and snacks. But that's going to be immediately followed by this cohort's in-flight showcase. Debbie's excited. Debbie's going to be on the docket. Is that right? That's right. Debbie's here. She's going to be talking about her products. So whether you're looking to find out what's cool, what's new in the world of the startups that we're getting to see, come to that in-flight showcase. Free co-working day is on the fourth Thursday of every month. And our Serial with a Serial series, which our most recent one was Mark Cleveland. Sorry, I'm calling you out just because you're here. That's up online now, so you can see our interview with Mark Cleveland. Our next is Tanya Lewis, a friend of mine who's on her third or fourth company. We're going to get her a definitive number on that. And then our next lunch event is delayed a week just because some holidays. But man, we're going to talk about parenting and entrepreneuring. And so if that's you, or you think that might be you, or you want to know all the secrets and answers to that, don't come to that panel because we're not going to have them. But we're at least going to talk about it and acknowledge it because it's a for real part of life. And the last piece is where folks can be reminded of our next awards. So October 21st is our next awards. So it's an awesome event where we are honoring the coolest, the best, the fastest growing, the coolest everything, and who is next in this city. And so next in certain industries, but who have done great and awesome things when it comes to running their company. So right now you can also nominate and apply at this QR code. So if you got a cool company that you want to nominate, that you want them to be considered, go for it. And if you're just ready to apply, go do that too. So we want as many companies as possible who are qualified there to help us out. So one more slide before we turn it back over to Dave is this. Keep on the lookout. If you're a current member or thinking about being a member here, we're changing some things up. And so we want to give you more benefits, plain and simple. And so one of the coolest things that every member is going to have access to coming up is our advisor network. So we're currently going through that, editing, auditing, growing that, because that's one of the best things that entrepreneurs can have is access to a mentor, an advisor, an expert to help them grow and scale their business. So you're going to hear a lot about that coming up from folks like Trey and Lauren as well as we work to revamp that. So be on the lookout for that. My commercials are done, I'm told. So you guys got to get to know Dave Delaney. Dave and I go way back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. To decades ago, I'll say, at this point. But Dave is someone who I've always known to be a couple things, I guess. One is he's always going to be genuine. And so when I took over this role and got the honor to start kind of seeding and filling panels in these events, I was like, I'm not going to bring somebody who's not genuine. I'm not going to bring somebody who's not friendly and nice. I think Dave may talk a little bit about how he's nice. But also someone who's not committed to help other people grow. And so whenever I've run into Dave or talked to Dave, he's always asked me how he can help me, which is very nice, and it sort of stops me sometimes. But that's going to be true for all of you here today. He's also going to cover a really important topic. So of course we want to make sure these contents are interesting. When Dave first told me about this, I think at the end of last year, the work he was doing that he's going to cover today about neurodivergence, but particularly ADHD, was something I was like, well, let's talk about it in the context of entrepreneurship. And he said, okay. So you're going to find Dave to be friendly, funny, genuine, but most importantly, someone who just cares about you, cares about our community, and cares about entrepreneurs. So that's it with the intros. Dave, I'm going to leave it to you, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Sam. Round of applause for Sam. Okay. Well, yes. Thank you for the kind words, Sam. And thank you to Lauren for helping to coordinate today. I've been very excited about coming to speak for y'all. Has anybody seen me speak before? Just curious. Okay, a few hands. Okay. So this presentation is a little different than some of the other stuff I do, but I think you're in for a treat. And if not, well, full refund at the door. So anyway, no, I'm very excited. I hope everybody, is everybody okay from last night, from the storms? Everybody good? Okay, I would assume you probably wouldn't come had you been affected. That was a little hairy. And we were supposed to be at Neil Young last night for my wife's birthday, and we were like waiting anxiously. Do we go? Because we may die. And I'm a huge Neil Young fan, like diehard fan, but I don't really want to kill the whole family. Maybe just me to see Neil, but no. So thankfully, they finally postponed it, and we're going tonight. Yay! So anyway, in case you're wondering too, I might sound funny. That's because I'm Canadian, but I'm actually now officially a Canarican, as Neil, a term Neil coined. Actually, he's got a song about it. Like Neil, I'm a Canadian citizen, born and raised, and then I almost said converted. I converted to American. I'm now one of you. So anyway. So I might say a, it still comes up, and I might say y'all. I might even say like all y'all, which gets really weird. And but anyway, I'm excited to talk about the root down, which is a little ADHD-inspired process story and some tools and tips that you can use today. So let's get started. That's me. Yeah. I was a class clown. I was a total goofball when I was little. Thank God I outgrew that. Not at all. But I was a real class clown. I used to joke around, interrupt class, drive my teachers insane. I married one, not from back then. That would have been weird. But my wife is a school teacher with Metro Nashville Schools. And it's just incredible reflecting on some stuff here, and I'll get into this. But as a class clown, like I was very good at like interrupting class. And sometimes I just couldn't control myself. And we were doing a school production of Little Red Riding Hood. Anybody not familiar? Yeah. Okay, we'll talk later. I'll fill you all in. It's a great story. So we were doing a school performance of Little Red Riding Hood, and I was the brave lumberjack. Sometimes it's a hunter. In Canada, it's a lumberjack, but whatever. So I was the brave lumberjack who would come to Little Red Riding Hood's rescue when she cried for help being attacked by the wolf. And so I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. And so I had my role, and I was very excited. This is grade 1, by the way, first grade. And because I was disrupting the class so much and causing all sorts of trouble and problems, my teacher demoted me. And instead of playing the brave lumberjack, I became a tree. A stupid, plain, boring tree. And my stage direction had changed dramatically. I was now the tree that the lumberjack would be striking as he runs off to Little Red's rescue. And so now my stage direction is something like this. I've got to stand on the stage wearing brown corduroys and a green turtleneck. It's the 70s, that was the thing. Got my arms stretched out, and all I was supposed to do, the stage direction, was when when the lumberjack is striking my hip, I'm supposed to do this. And that's it. No lines, nothing. So that night, I'm up on stage, arms straight, I'm gonna do the tree. Little Red cries for help. Lumberjack's working on me. He strikes me, 1, 2, I have my arms out, and instead, for some reason, I have no idea to this day, I do this. And I fall, boof, flat on my chest. And just boom, like a fallen tree. Every face in that auditorium is laughing their heads off. I completely stole the show. In fact, the only face in the audience that was very, very angry was my teacher, who had demoted me. Her face was redder than Little Red Riding Hood's robe, red. Just irate. So I stole the show, killed it, but she was pretty upset. And what happened was I kept getting report cards. And in fact, as it turns out, these are actually my report cards, by the way. I scanned them all. My mom kept my report cards from school. Crazy, right? She's British. She grew up during the war, so she keeps everything. And so she had all my report cards from when I was a kid. And so my wife and I brought them out, and we've been looking through them, and it's pretty hilarious. But getting back to that night, there was another incident beyond ruining the school play, which was involved blowing up a fuse box accidentally at school as well. I share that story on my podcast. I'll tell you about that after. Anyway, I was expelled. Kicked out of school, first grade. Not a good track record starting my education. Kicked out of school in grade 1. I had to go to a new school. And so I changed schools, and I tried my hardest. I really did. But I wasn't a mean kid. I wasn't a bully. I wasn't a bad person. But I was a bit of a delinquent in the sense that I would goof off too much and joke around and all the things I mentioned. And so here I am, trying my best in this new school, and every year the teachers would just graduate me to the next year because they didn't want to deal with me again. And it wasn't really until 7th grade, grade 7, 7th grade, where my teacher finally failed me. He was like, look, and he was great. I actually hold him in great regard. But Mr. Riley said, Dave, let's hold off here. Let's try this again. And so he held me back a year. But I kept trying. Even through high school, I kept trying. And it was really difficult. And I ended up being disruptive and funny and goofing off all the time. In fact, when it's all said and done, I was kicked out of 5 high schools. or no, I was kicked out of 4 high schools 5 times because one of them let me come back and then they kicked me out again. So not a good track record. Fast forward to last year, something happened and it led me to discover why I've been acting this way and why I act certain ways and do certain things. And the answer is, I have ADHD. So, how many people are familiar with ADHD? Okay. So, how many people are familiar with ADD? Okay. So, first thing to share, ADHD is the new Coke. It's the same thing as ADD. So, this is often a confusion because people think ADD is the same as, or they think it's different, but it's actually the same thing. They just gave it an age. And we could talk more about that. But I wanted to share a bunch about my journey to inspire you and to go through what I've developed, which I said is called the Root Down, and it's got steps to help you regardless of your neurotype, okay? So one of the studies, or a couple of the studies that I've been reading about since being diagnosed last year, like 50 years of not knowing I had ADHD, diagnosed last year, one of the things I've learned is that if you have ADHD, you are between 60 to 80% likely to have entrepreneurial intentions. And you're nearly 100% more likely to start a business. Like these people, right here. These people all have, these founders all have ADHD. And it is pretty astounding how ADHD runs rampant in both creative people, but also in entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs, you could argue, are often quite creative. So it's pretty incredible. And in fact, I've been hired more and more to go and speak to entrepreneurial groups. I just spoke for EO in Silicon Valley and Oakland to do this presentation because, again, ADHD is rampant with entrepreneurs. And I'll get to why it's important to address this as we go here. 2020 sucked. And I'm sure we're in Nashville. I see all your heads nodding, right? 2020 sucked, right? So we had the pandemic, right? We had all sorts of things going on. So we had this pandemic we didn't know. Were we all going to die? We weren't really sure. It was pretty bad. We had, police violence. We had civil unrest. We had a questionable political spectrum, and things were kind of questionable then. So it was a very tense, very awkward, very, just a tough time. I say this because, as you know, or probably know, if you're from Nashville or you've been here a few years, March 3rd, 2020, we saw a tornado come through town, and that is my kids' school. Or was. Thankfully, they've rebuilt it now. But that was what was left of the kids' school. And in fact, both my kids are band kids. That's their band director's house. And this wasn't far from our house either. Luckily, we weren't harmed in the tornado. Needless to say, it was a very stressful time. And, we had a lot of friends checking in on us, asking us, you guys okay with the tornado? And we said, yeah, we're lucky this time. Fast forward 3 months to May 3rd. A straight line windstorm came through, derecho. That one got us. And as you see up there, that's our living room back then. And that is the branch that shish kebabbed our roof, attic, living room. And we had 10 holes in the roof, all these things. So I'm sharing this with you because during this time, I was so stressed out because now my business, I'm a speaker, I travel to speak, I help companies improve communication skills, I do all this stuff. But during this time, my business was like, hang on, we gotta wait, right? And my business had become full-time dealing with contractors and insurance because remember during the pandemic, if any of you were dealing with that, it was a whole different thing dealing with insurance who could virtually tour your house, blah, blah, blah. So I say all this because it was very stressful, and we were displaced for 3 months out of our house. My family and I, obviously, we couldn't live in our house. We had walls down, all the water damage and stuff. And so I did a few things, and one of the things that I was doing, I found, was drinking too much. I was like just having one too many or two too many beers each night. I was feeling just so stressed. I was unwinding each night, and I was having like a few beers instead of like maybe one or none. And because of all the stress and things that I was under, I just decided things have to change. And so during all this time, I experienced some big wins. So 2020 didn't entirely suck. Some of these wins include spending more time with my family. We had a Bob Ross painting party for my birthday that year because we were in quarantine. It was awesome. I've got a video time lapse. I'll share it with you if you're interested. Celebrated my anniversary. We paid off our last, thank God, we paid off our last mortgage. We started seeing a virtual fitness instructor, partly because we're getting into the pandemic, and we were like, we probably need to take our health more seriously, right? And so we got some equipment, we started working out much more. I started seeing a therapist for the anxiety I was under virtually. But this is an important point. A therapist can't necessarily diagnose you with ADHD, right? And anxiety, depression, and there's others, but anxiety and depression are two, what's called a comorbidity of ADHD. So it doesn't mean that if you have anxiety, you have ADHD. But if you have anxiety, there's a possibility it's the ADHD that's causing the anxiety or the depression. And so it's important, by the way, not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet, so just to be clear. Anyway, during that time, I also decided to start getting serious about meditation. And I started a daily meditation and mindfulness practice, which I still do today, has been incredible. I paused social media, as I'm doing this month right now for myself. For mental health, I paused social media and I paused news. And I have apps and things to block me from going there. And then I quit drinking. So this is June 8th, 2020, bless you. I decided, enough's enough. I'm just going to quit. And I quit drinking and haven't had a drink since, which is pretty cool. Thanks. So, and trust me, the big thing was the non-alcoholic beers. Like, there's really good non-alcoholic beers now. Like, O'Doul days, we're gone. So during the pandemic especially, ADHD diagnosis started increasing a lot. And they were increasing for a few reasons. One, people lost their scaffolding, as it's called, right? We were working in our offices, suddenly we had to work from home. So our lives were all turned upside down. Now, I've been working from home for 13 years. So luckily I was prepared for that part, but I didn't have a house, which turned things around a little, right? So there was a lot more diagnosis during this time. There wasn't more people with ADHD suddenly, because guess what? You're born with it. You're always ADHD. You don't move away from ADHD. You're born with it. There's like a slight number of people, a slight percent of people that develop ADHD, and I believe that's from like head trauma. But again, not a doctor. So I say this because of these increases, the other side of this was women. So back in the day, ADHD or ADD back then was the naughty boy syndrome. So it was only the boys. The girls didn't have ADHD. Of course they did. They just showed up differently, right? They were like twirling their hair or staring out of the window or not focused on the work or all these things. Maybe straight A students. Of course, that can be, and you can still have ADHD. So it's not a question of intelligence or anything like that. So anyway, when I was diagnosed last year, I decided that since I'm a squirrel, I decided I'm going to start sharing everything I'm learning, and so that I can empower other people to get tested and learn about this. And so what I did was I created what I call whysquirrels.com. And whysquirrels.com is my podcast website. Feel free to drop by. We'd love to have you. But I created this as a way to share what I'm learning with the world so that they too can learn about late diagnosed adults with ADHD. By the way, if you have a kid with ADHD, you're around 75 to 80%. One of the parents probably has ADHD. It's highly hereditary. So Let me get into this very quickly. Very quickly, the symptoms of ADHD, and these are some of them: impulsiveness, disorganizations, excessive activity, restlessness, poor planning. It doesn't mean that if you suffer from all of, or just one of these or something, that you have ADHD. And I'll give you a tool in a minute. But these are some of the common symptoms of ADHD. So it doesn't mean you have to have them all. Another point here is there are benefits. What? Benefits of ADHD? Stop. But there are. Creativity, energy. You get hyper-focused. The H gets confused. People think H stands for hyperactive, and I don't think I have ADHD because I'm not hyperactive. But you can become hyper-focused on your work. Like coming up with an idea to start a website and a podcast all about ADHD and doing it all overnight. That's me, designing it, creating it. Once a podcaster is always a podcaster. Next year will be 20 years podcasting for me. By the way, great podcasting meetup out of the EC that Clark hosts. I encourage you to come check that out. Okay. So I said I'll share some tools. This is one of them. You can feel free to scan this with your phone if you like. I'll give you my contact info after too, so you can reach out to me if you have questions or want any of the stuff that I share. What this will do is take you to an ADHD assessment that's on the website on Squirrels. I do not see the answers. I do not see the results. But it's a way to do a quick little test to see possibly. But the most important thing is you still should see a doctor regardless of the results. Okay? Cool? Are we good? You're all like, I've eaten so much, I'm sleepy. All right, we're good. Okay, cool. So let's talk about why we're here. Because we're talking about the ADHD, but I'm talking about the root down. And this is a process that I've developed. There's something called coping mechanisms. And so what coping mechanisms are something you develop to deal with whatever challenges you may have. I developed coping mechanisms over 50 years before being diagnosed with ADHD. And so what I was doing was treating my ADHD without realizing that's what I was doing. And this, I think, is part of the reason why so many entrepreneurs, they create solutions for things that are common to them, but in reality, they're solving things that everybody needs help with, like punctuality or time management or different software tools, things like that. So let's talk about the root down. It comes into three pillars. The first is to know yourself. And again, what I share with you here, all of you can do, regardless of your neurotype. It doesn't matter. Know yourself, respect yourself, and connect yourself. So let's talk about knowing yourself and how we can better understand ourselves. And to do this, I have a few different exercises I recommend doing. The first is to be able to know yourself is to identify your superpowers. Does anybody know what their superpowers are? What's your superpower, Mark?
I connect ideas and peoples to create a vision.
Yes, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. That's great. What's your superpower? Did you? Sure. What is it? Creativity. That's great. Did you say one? Yeah. That's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Round of applause for you guys. Thank you. So I have this exercise that I did years ago, but I've now kind of improved it. And what it is, oh, sorry, I went ahead. Okay. So what it is you make a list of about 15 people that know you well, excluding your friends, excluding your family. It can be friends. It can be colleagues. It can be your clients, your customers. It could be folks here who know you well. What you want to do, and it can be from any period of your life. And you want it to be broad across periods of your life. So I emailed about 15, 20 people that I know well, that know me well. I'm talking about high school friends. I'm talking all the way up to clients and things like that. And I asked them a simple question. Knowing me the way you do, what would you say my superpower is? I know, this is awkward, right? But I swear to God, doing this is incredible Because what happens is you start to get replies. Now, I had one of my best friends from high school say, "You're a good talker." That's it. You're a good talker. It's like, okay. Others gave me paragraphs about the strengths and the things that they think my superpowers are. And what you do, and when I did this exercise, was I printed out all the replies, and then I just studied them for a long time and tried to find commonalities. Because being a good talker could be like being a good performer, or being a good presenter, or a speaker, or maybe a writer, or a podcaster, or things like that. So look at these things and find the commonalities. Now, fast forward to nowadays, and we've got a thing called AI. Have you guys heard about this yet? A little bit? Yeah. So using ChatGPT, what I did was I took all of those replies and I stripped out any personal information, very important, and I fed it into ChatGPT. And I said, "ChatGPT, please summarize this person based on this feedback." And this is what it wrote. And if you know me, you'll know that this hits me, like nails it. And this is from summarizing email replies from people I've known all my life. And again, anybody can do this, not to do with ADHD, right? I've recently taken this, combined it with all 140 plus of my LinkedIn recommendations, combined it with my work history, and my superpowers. I combined it all, and I put it on, and I fed it all into ChatGPT. And I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you please summarize this person based on all of this?" And I asked it, like, why would you hire this person? Or what are their strengths? And guess what? If you go to davedelaney.me/why, you can see the results there if you're curious. But it's pretty interesting how it summarized me. And again, combining all this information, it did such a good job. Now, the other point about this is I also combined it with my strengths. Anybody done any strengths finder, DISC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, these types of personality assessments? There's many different ones. Some of my favorites include Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths, DISC, Enneagram, and Predictive Index. I share this with you here because I took all of these results of me and fed it again into ChatGPT. And that was that page that I shared with you. That's where you can find those results. It's pretty amazing. And it's very consistent. So my secret power is communication. I help people and organizations improve how they communicate. So I'd never heard of executive function. I thought it was like where bigwig like C-suite people, founders get dressed up and head out to the ballroom, to the ball, and that sounds like an executive function to me, right? Nah. Executive function is how your brain operates, your prefrontal cortex. That's where your executive functioning skills live. And guess what? With ADHD, sometimes we're a little challenged with these. So some of these functions include all of this stuff. Now, the verdict's out on, or when you're looking at executive functioning skills defined, they vary and they're said in different words because there's no consensus on exactly what they are or the terminology used. So just preface it with that. But these are some of the most common ones. So self-monitoring, goal setting, problem solving, time management. I got here early. I'm anal about early. This is the fascinating thing about being diagnosed late. And by the way, I'll ask if you want, is anybody here diagnosed late with ADHD? Nice, couple, awesome, great. So you start to this line, it all makes sense, right? You learn that it all does make sense. So time management for me, I'm anal about time management. I show up places an hour early, but of course I'm respectful, so I don't show up an hour early, but I sit in my car and listen to a podcast or whatever. But I'm there, right? I'm never late. I pride myself on that. But again, I did this. It's a coping mechanism that I've developed, my punctuality over the years to address my ADHD without realizing that's why I was doing it. Something else that happens with ADHDers is we lack dopamine. And so we try to find that dopamine in other ways. And alcohol, smoking, drugs, those are some ways. Excessiveness, ADHDers can be more prone to addiction. I wasn't addicted to alcohol. I was to cigarettes back in the day, but it's been like 25 years. But with alcohol, I would always be excessive. So I would drink, not always, but a lot of time I would drink like an extra beer. One too many, right? As I kind of, as I had kids, I kind of stopped doing that so much. But we would go out to eat, and I would finish all their food on, I would finish my son's chicken fingers and my daughter's fries, and they'd be like, oh my God, he's embarrassing us. And I always did it because my dad would make me finish everything on my plate before I left the table. And that's who I blamed for that. But the truth is, it's because of my excessiveness and that dopamine that I'm missing and finding ways to find that dopamine unknowingly. Speaking in front of an audience is a huge rush of dopamine. I didn't know this, but it makes a lot of sense. So, again, these are executive functioning skills. I've got a link on the website. Or I can send it to you later. There's an executive functioning skill assessment you can do. Again, I don't see the results. So if you want that, let me know. Anybody heard of Ikigai? Great. I don't have a ton of time to get into this. I have a blog post at Squirrels all about Ikigai. But the long and the short of it is it's a process that you go through. You ask yourself what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you're good at, and then what you love. And then when you determine what these are, and I have a whole process for this with my clients, but when you figure out what these answers are, you combine them. So you look at like what you love and what the world needs, and you find the commonalities between those. That becomes your mission. When you look at what the world needs and what you can be paid for, that becomes your vocation. When you look at what you can be paid for and what you're good at, that becomes your profession. And then what you love and what you are good at, and that becomes your passion. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's just that easy. There you go. Thank ancient Japanese culture for that one. Okay, let me get into the second section here. As I'm keeping an eye on time, I want to be mindful of time here. What is the meaning of life? I was listening to a podcast a long time ago, and there was an ex-CIA agent on it, and he was talking about this covert base in the middle of the South somewhere. He didn't say where. And on this base, there's a bar. And this is where the agents all go and hang out after work, let loose. And in that bar is written by hand on the wall, and this base has been around forever, the question is written, what is the meaning of life? And the rule is you can write graffiti style, you can write the answer, but you have to draw a circle around it and connect it to something else on the wall. So you have to connect it to somebody else's answer. And I was fascinated by this story because I found out what that one thing is. And his answer to this question of what's the meaning of life, the answer is this: self-respect. You can't do anything, and you can't you can't raise a great family without self-respect. You can't take care of yourself without great self-respect. You can't build amazing businesses and things. You might by fluke, right? But it's not going to last. You have to have self-respect. It starts from within. You have to have self-respect. And this means self-awareness, like I talked about in the first section, but it also means about self-love and accepting yourself for all your strengths and even your weaknesses. And so that first section, as I was talking about, it helps you identify your strengths, right? Now, knowing this stuff, you can then start working on self-respect. So that is the second pillar here in the root down. And in the self-respect mode, what I recommend you do is this. Think about a growth mindset. Anybody heard about growth mindset? Yeah. So there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset means I can't learn it, I can't do it, no, no, no. And a growth mindset means being open and understanding that the more you learn, that life is a journey and we're all learning along the way. So the more we grow, the more we learn, the better we are, right? The better we become. Carol Dweck is a Stanford professor, and she's the one that coined this through many, many years of research. She teaches, I believe she still teaches at Stanford, all about this stuff. So striving for a growth mindset. Now, I don't have enough time to get into all this stuff. So the other thing I want to talk about is journaling. Anybody journal? For the longest time, I have all these journals that were started, and then I abandoned and started another one, and then abandoned that, and then started another one. I realize now I was approaching it like a diary. And I was like, oh, I haven't written in 3 months. Start a new one. But journaling can be sketches, they could be a recipe, they could be a title for something, it doesn't matter. And when I realized this, I'm like, oh, I have permission to write whatever the hell I want in my journal. But I have found that writing a journal daily has helped me so much come up with ideas, to think through things, to realize for myself why I might be stuck or why I might be having negative feelings about something. Again, I don't have the time to get into all that, but I do encourage you to just start journaling. Even if you write a couple words, like literally, write 2 words a morning. There is a great book called The Artist's Way. Anybody read it? Nobody? Oh man, you gotta look it up. The Artist's Way, it's a great book. In The Artist's Way, there's many different exercises you can do. The one that I love is one called Morning Pages, where you write 3 pages of whatever you want every morning, regardless of what it is. And then just throw it away or keep it. It's up to you. But the whole idea is to sit down in the morning before you sit in front of your screens and start writing. And it's incredible what comes out. And it might be garbage too, but you work it out. It's great. Okay. Anybody have a mindfulness or meditation practice? Nice, a couple of you. This is something huge, huge, huge. As I said, I started it in 2020. It's amazing all these things. Like I'd meditated over the years and dabbled, but I couldn't stay focused long enough on my breath. I thought things. And I learned that, guess what? That's what our brains are supposed to be doing. It's about focusing on the moment, focusing on your breath, but then treating, one of the best pieces of advice I've had with meditation is think of your thoughts as little movies, right? So if you're trying to meditate and you start thinking, God, I gotta go pick up, I gotta go pick up flowers from the flower shop for Heather, it's her birthday yesterday. So I start thinking about this. Instead of like, I can't meditate. Instead, play it out in your mind. Okay, picture yourself in the car. You drive into the florist. I go in, I buy the flowers, go back in the car, drive back home, put them in water, and I hide them from her. That's it. How long did it take me to explain that? So when you think about it this way, the movie ends, and you can get back to the breath. It's been a huge revelation for me. But there's a lot more to it. There's a great book I recommend reading called, it's John Kabat-Zinn. Anybody read his stuff? Yeah, nice. It's great. It's called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it's amazing. Okay. The other thing I've learned in meditation and mindfulness, it's often confused, but really I find with meditation, you become more mindful because you're more thoughtful, you're more focused on the moment, right? So you're more mindful. And the opposite of mindful is mindless. Who wants to be mindless, right? So it's about being mindful. And so in this example, in 2020 again, I was practicing mindfulness. I started learning about changing my perspective and about what's called reframing in psychology. Taking a thought and giving it a different focus, right? So like how many people love public speaking? Oh, wow, okay, a few of you. Anyway, most of you I assume do not. Well, when you get up on stage to speak, you get these you get nervous. But guess what? Maybe it's excitement. So that's the thing about reframing those thoughts. Because guess what it feels like to be nervous? Your tummy's doing things, maybe you're sweating a little bit, you're shaking a little bit. What do you do when you're excited? Your tummy's doing stuff, you're sweating a little bit, maybe you're shaking a little bit, right? It's the same feeling. So it's about reframing. So let me explain. Anybody go to Radnor Lake ever? Hell yeah. For all of you who do not go to Radnor Lake, you gotta go to Radnor Lake. It's like what a beautiful hike, and it's right here, not just down the road, really. So in 2020, I'm feeling really blue, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling kind of depressed, to be honest, and anxious, and all the things. And I decided, okay, I need to go for a hike. So I go to Radnor Lake. And as I'm walking through Radnor Lake along the trail, I'm feeling really depressed and sad and just icky. And the reason why I started feeling really sad was because I saw all these parents with their kids, right? And I started realizing my kids are 17 and 18 now. They don't want to go for hikes with me. And those days are kind of past. My son's pushing off to college next year. This August, God. And so I started feeling sad about this. And as I'm walking along, I'm like, wait, no. I should be feeling joy. And I actually was mindful in the moment to realize, shut up, Dave. This is joyful. I'm joyful because I had the history of along these trails of taking my kids. We did this. There they are. And that's at Radnor Lake. I took them along those trails all the time. I should be happy for these parents who are having this fun time with their kids. Right? I should be happy for the kids who are playing around. So why am I sitting here being, negative and upset? Maybe if I'd never taken my kids out for hikes, yeah, maybe I could feel kind of negative then. But in that moment, I'm like, no, I did all this stuff. So this is called reframing, and it leads to revelations. Does that make sense? Okay. How am I doing on time? 10 minutes? Okay, great. So, there's more to it than this. And I talk a lot about this stuff on my podcast, which is called ADHD Wise Squirrels. Wise because of the wisdom late diagnosed folks have developed over the years, and then squirrel because squirrel, right? So, but let me get into this last section about connecting yourself. Now, the cost of loneliness, this has been proven. The former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murphy, has written at length. He wrote a great book about this. Loneliness, the feeling of loneliness, it has the same health effects or negative health effects as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And this has been proven in multiple studies. So when you feel lonely, it ain't good. And this is part of the reason why, Nathaniel's been to a few of my events recently where I started something called the Nice Maker events, where I have little casual coffee meetings. You're all invited. You should come out. But the point of it is really just to get people together, get out of the house, get away from the office, let down your hair a little bit, and just have a good time and meet new people, share from one another about our own challenges with our businesses, and maybe find some opportunities to serve one another. I wrote a book years ago called New Business Networking, and networking is something that I'm very passionate about when you do it nicely, right? So it's about providing value first and foremost, finding ways to provide value. So the cost of loneliness is that. It's about that. It's about solving the cost of loneliness. And that means finding the others, right? And so connecting yourself. Now, you're all here right now. You're all in this room. You can leave after this event. See ya, and all walk out quietly by yourselves. Or you can turn to somebody and say, wow, that Delaney, what a freak. Or, hey, I liked what he said about that. Or, are you going to try that? Or, wow, he does sound funny with a Canadian Southern thing. Anyway, so I do want you to meet new people. That's a big part of what the EC is all about. So connect yourself. So I talked about 2 cups, and the idea here is that you could also say, hey, you want to go get a coffee after this? Or, go meet for a coffee. It's about having a cup of coffee. Who likes coffee? Okay. Who doesn't like coffee? Do you like tea? Do you like tea? Yeah, okay. Tea, coffee, whatever, right? Hot beverages or cold, whatever. You can do beer. I quit drinking, but there's non-alcoholic beers. My buddy and I go out on tears now, NA beer tears. And we drink the bar's full supply of non-alcoholic beers. It's great. Anyway, when I talk about networking, I talk about 3 ups, which is a topic for a whole other thing. But what I'll share are the 3 ups. Show up. You all did that today. Follow up. And then catch up. And this means sending a message to the people that you meet afterwards, follow up with them. Hey, it was great to meet you. You're right, Dave is weird. Whatever it is. Man, lunch was awesome. I'm gonna go to the next one. Anything like that. And then catch up. So set it in your calendar, in your CRM, whatever you use, but don't just leave it at that. Maybe you can follow up, plan to get a coffee, and then catch up later another time over months or whenever it is. Just set it in your calendar so you remember. One exercise I do is I go back through my calendar at certain points in the year. Again, ADHD. If it's not on my calendar, it ain't happening, right? I live and die by my calendar. But I go back to my calendar and I say, okay, I look at all the meetings I had in January, and I'll start following up with people. It's that simple. Go back through, look at all the people you met with, and start emailing them all. Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. How'd that thing work out? So that's called catching up. So show up, follow up, catch up. Make sense? Cool. Okay. If you run a company with a team, this is also a topic for a training that I do that is a deeper dive, but I did want to mention a few things. If you manage a neurodiverse team, or you have folks who are neurodivergent on your team, a few things quickly to point out. Again, not a lot of time here, so creating a supportive environment, right? I mean, come on. Make it supportive, make it exciting, make it great for everybody that works with you. Communication and instructions are very important for ADHDers. We need clearer communication. We need to know exactly what you need done, right? So instructions are important. Flexibility and accommodations, depending on, I'm not an expert in autism and other things, right? I'm not an expert in that. I've just studied ADHD like crazy. Hyper-focused, if you will. But different people have different flexibility, so maybe somebody needs a quiet room by themselves where they can focus, right? So it's about accommodating different people, because a lot of times in the ADHD community, especially, we talk a lot about the fact that we live in a neurotypical world. This world was made for neurotypical people. And so sometimes things can be challenging for neurodiverse people. And so it's important to recognize what those challenges are and accommodate, right? And then feedback, recognition, and great leadership, and I do training and all that stuff on that topic, so I won't get into the weeds on that now. I'm gonna close here with a couple points. One of them is about the root down and about roots. There's another great book called The Hidden Life of Trees. Anybody read this? Nice. It's such a cool book. So the author is a forester, and he has studied how trees talk to one another. And he makes the case that trees are talking. I know, it's like, what? But they've proven it. So for example, they have measured electrical currents running through the root systems of trees, through forests. There's electrical currents happening. And it's not just one, it's like all these different electrical currents happening in the roots. Another point he makes is about how, let's say an invasive beetle comes into the forest. Guess what? The trees that first encounter these beetles emit a chemical. And the other trees in the forest receive the chemical, and they too will emit a chemical in order to deter the bees. And vice versa. If the forest is looking for natural reforestation, the forest will then communicate that, to attract some sort of beetle or whatever. Clearly, this is not my specialty, right? But I share this because we are like trees. We're all like trees. We're all different. We have commonalities, but we're all connected. Humans are connected. We're all connected in this room right now. Diversity is so important. In a forest, if there's only one species of trees in the forest, and an invasive thing attacks and starts wiping out that type of tree, what happens? The forest dies. All the trees are gone. But if the forest has all sorts of different trees and species of trees, it survives. So diversity, just like us, is something we need, right? So connecting, the other thing I'll leave you with, which I think is really interesting, is that if you look up at the top of a tree, the crown of the tree, The root system is double the width of the crown of the tree, which is pretty wild. So we're all connected, and we can cure loneliness or at least help alleviate it. I've got a lot more to say on it, but I don't have time right now. I do want to wind this down very quickly with this picture. Those are my kiddos, and they are everything to me for all the obvious reasons. They're my kids, and this is them now. And they'll probably be really angry for me posting this photo, sharing this photo with you. The reason why I'm sharing this with you, though, is there's a difference between their ages. The difference is 13 years. And with undiagnosed and untreated undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, your life expectancy can be up to 13 years less. So going back for a second, that would mean missing all that. If I had drank too much, became addicted, if I had become obese and died from excessive eating, if I had made a wrong turn without thinking, we're risk averse, right? All these things are conditions and can happen from ADHD. So the important thing is to be mindful of this and get tested if you feel that any of the stuff I've shared with you today resonates with you, or even someone you know or someone in your family. If you want those 13 years back, get tested and get treatment. I'm seeing a psychologist. I'm on meds. You should see me before when I was off the meds, or before I ever had any. So anyway, winding this down very quickly, the root down consists of knowing, right? Knowing yourself, your strengths, and it consists of respecting yourself, self-acceptance, self-love, and then connecting yourself, finding your community, finding the others. Maybe that's multiple groups. I do the coffee thing. If you want to come hang out, totally open to that. I'd love to have you. Connecting at the EC, again, you're all entrepreneurial. That's why you're here. So last thing, you're going to humor me here. Everybody up. I know. I promise it's easy. Okay. Arms out. Feels good to stretch after sitting for a while too, right? Okay, repeat after me. Here we go. With the root down, we unite and grow. Accept and connect, let my true self show. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. That QR code will take you to that assessment, and it takes you to Wise Squirrels. The podcast I do every 2 weeks. There's a new episode coming out soon. And I want to thank everybody. I'll stick around for questions too, but I know Lauren has some announcements as well. So thank you again, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Let's give Dave a big